All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. As we figured, some of you I know came from the last meeting where we talked federal updates, and some of you are just here for this one. So they're both recorded. If you'd like to check out the federal one, we will have that recording and we can send that to you. But I'm going to share my slides here. There is a Q&A function and a chat function, and we could also take you off mute if you raise your hand and tap you in. But I am going to give what's probably going to be a short overview for the Minnesota legislature, taking a lot less of the news than the federal legislature and presidency race right now. But probably in many ways, your state legislature is always going to be more impactful and more important. If you don't know, we've kind of come together, Minnesota Milk and our sister organizations. We now power the Voice of Milk, just so that we can talk about ourselves more simply when we're out and about around the country. But Minnesota Milk is certainly not going away. So just wanted to show the logo in case you had not seen that press release. We're still Minnesota Milk, and we'll still probably show Minnesota Milk logos all over at the state capitol and anywhere in Minnesota. But at the same time, you might start seeing publications where when we've got national news and state news that replicates each other, it might be under the Voice of Milk banner. So just wanted to let you know Minnesota Milk is not going away, but we're excited about our new kind of Voice of Milk collaboration, which is powered by the 4 companies you see on the screen here. So this is our election update. Pulling out of last year, I don't think much will change going forward. You might remember last year we kind of crashed and burned out of the session, hoping that a bonding bill would pass. We had some dairy bonding, a lot of dairy bonding money in there that unfortunately didn't make it forward. So there's still a bonding bill that's been mostly agreed to sitting out there. They literally just ran out of time 30 seconds late. But otherwise, I think our main status stays the same. We want investment in dairy. We're really looking at infrastructure improvements, if you want to call it that. Livestock investment grants, that's infrastructure on the farms, and then enhancement of roads and bridges, and then MDI, Minnesota Dairy Initiatives, returning that to full funding as we kind of help rebuild that program to the future. There's some open positions there, by the way, I know in Southeast Minnesota. So if that's of interest to you or someone you know, please check that out. But I don't think these initiatives will change all that much because we didn't have very many initiatives on the positive or proactive front change. As far as our in-state staff, I wanted to let you know that we have 3 of us. We have an open position right now. So if you or someone you know is looking for a member services type role in Minnesota or South Dakota, we are excited to be adding that. This person will have a focus, especially on farmer-led group and climate-related work. And Caitlin right now is on leave. I think I can share she had a daughter back in August, back in October. And we're excited that she'll be, I think, joining us in about a month, maybe a month and a half, and they are doing well. So excited to have Caitlin back for several reasons, selfishly. So Minnesota, I think you all know we were awaiting the president races because that would have created a lot of dominoes to change here. And we still have Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. So that part does not change. But I think, as you all know, they do not make the laws. They sign the laws and can maybe do orders. And so 2023, looking back, it was pretty simple. Democrats had the trifecta. We had first Speaker Dziedzic due to cancer. We had, Leader Dziedzic, and then due to cancer, Leader Murphy stepped up. And then Speaker Melissa Hortman. Proud to say that I and many members of the board know both of these women well. Darren Macbeth, our lobbyist, who, by the way, is at a national meeting, otherwise he would have joined us today, knows both of them well. And so we will continue working with them in whatever role they have this year. But what we're expecting in 2024, as you've probably heard by now, is we have an exactly down the middle split of the Minnesota House. We have Speaker designates Demuth, Demuth is how you pronounce it, and Hortman. And then we're expecting Leader Murphy to return. Now, any of that could change. They had their preliminary elections here just lately. But I'm sure the Republicans are trying to figure out, is there a Democrat we could pick off and get to 68, 66? And the Democrats are thinking the same. Based on what you'll see here, I think it's more likely that the Republicans would try to pick somebody off. But that's all up in the air at this point. But for the first time, I think ever, we have not 2, but 3 women leading our caucuses, and we look forward to working with them in their future capacities. So this is what Minnesota looks like as a result of the House races. On the right there, you can see the districts. This is not that much different than what we used to have. The big changes, however, are here in Nicollet County and in Winona County and up in the Northeast region. Those are the big three changes, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. But first, I wanted to just mention, so we've got purple districts here based on vote count. These are the 7 districts that voted opposite President and Minnesota House. So they voted for President Trump, but they voted for a Democratic House candidate. So we've got St. Cloud, that's Dan Wolgamat. He was at first at a recount, but that's looking to go back. St. Louis County outside of Duluth, Lake Elmo on the east side of the cities, Lakeville, Rogers, White Bear Lake, Minnetonka suburbs. So those are the ones where I think you would look that the politicians in those zones could be saying, oh, maybe I need to caucus with the other party. I think that's highly unlikely at this point, but it certainly is a possibility based on how those go. And 45A, Minnetonka, you had a GOP presidential vote 10% for Trump, with only the representative there winning by just under 2%. So that's a pretty big swing, and I'm sure they're thinking about their future. One district is heading to recount of those, but it looks pretty solid that it's going to stay the same. That's actually down in Shakopee. New members. So these are the flips. Cal Warwis is up in the Northeast region. That's Aurora is the town formerly held by Dave Lillisgaard. So that is a flip, as we've seen the Northeast flip from Democrat or DFL to Republican over the past probably 10 years. And then 2 in more dairy areas, which is why I have them bolded, is Erica Schwartz. She's got an education background, but owns Nicollet Mart with her family, and defeated Jeff Brand. So Jeff was on both the Environment and Agriculture committees in the past, has served some non-consecutive terms, and so I know he is very disappointed to be leaving. And then down in the Southeast, we had a retirement also. So the Northeast zone with Cal Warwis was a retirement and expected to flip to Republican. In the Southeast, it was more up in the air. Aaron Rapinski replaced Gene Pulowski Jr. This is Winona County, so you've got the kind of, I don't want to call it urban because it's Winona, but the much more concentrated city down the hill, and then you've got kind of the country and the farmers up the hill from the Mississippi River. And so Aaron Rapinski works with Treasure Island, as I understand it, owns a boating and entertainment company. So these are 3 that we certainly want to meet with in coming weeks, and I'll pledge to do that. But they would be top of my list because I'm sure they're not only new, but trying to figure out who they should be working for. And I think in case of Ms. Schwartz and Mr. Rapinski, they should be working for us as dairy farmers. Then I'm not going to go through each of these, but we've got about 20 additional new members who are in the same party, so it's our job to meet with them. I'll just name the ones that I have in bold here who are in very dairy areas. Scott Van Binsbergen, and if you have any questions about your own area, please let me know. But Scott Van Binsbergen, that's a range that goes from, I think, the border or near the border on the west side of the state to South Dakota, all the way to Litchfield now. It's a long, not very tall top to bottom district. And so from Litchfield basically all the way to Montevideo is Scott Van Binsbergen. He's an accountant, business owner, realtor, and new to the scene. And then a friend of mine down in Southeast Minnesota, Keith Allen, agronomy farming background. He actually worked for Representative Finstead until going full-time in his campaign. And so that's a dairy district where things are changing. And then finally, Tom Sexton down in Waseca. So Representative Allen, or Representative-elect Allen, certainly has a lot of agronomy and farming background, but just due to where they live, I would know that Mr. Sexton and Van Binsbergen would have understanding of agriculture, and we are, again, hoping to set up those meetings top of the list. So if you're in one of those districts, please let us know. I won't go through the rest of the members unless someone specifically has questions, but being that these are new names and that there are 134 spaces to watch, I can't tell you that I know much about any of these remaining. And then, like I said, these are the close races. Dan Wolgamat, and this was probably from a couple days ago, had 191 vote lead. and Brad Tabke at one point had a 14-vote lead down in Shakopee. Wolgamott's lead has stretched enough, I believe, that is no longer a recount, and Tabke will remain a recount, and someone can correct me if those have changed. So let's look back on your money and what the legislature might do with it, and let's look forward. We had in 2023 a record of 72 billion with a B, and I put the emphasis there so we didn't get our B's and M's mixed up. 72 billion in new funding. So that was a record spend in Minnesota. After 2023, we had a 2.4 billion surplus, and that grew to 3.7 billion by the beginning of this year, by the beginning of January 2024, as the new legislature started. As things came together, you might remember, again, we were 30 seconds late on the bonding bill. Things kind of ended, I don't want to say crazy, but it was chaotic. There was 450 million in supplemental spending funded here at the end of May 2024. Otherwise, there was a big bonding bill expected that didn't happen. That kind of sits there on the shelf. This is from the Minnesota Management and Budget Office, just to give you an outlook. We had that record spend in 23, which bumped up 24, but we're sitting at about $32 billion, excuse me, dollars in spending here going forward. So our budget is relatively balanced. And since May, since we've left, I was looking this morning at the general revenues. We're up about 1% over projections every month. So 20 to 40 million, I think, extra each month, more revenues than expected expenses. And I know we have some state employees on, so if I'm getting some of this off, please let me know. So I would think that we're going to come in with a similar surplus at this point, but things can change really fast in that surplus to deficit zone. All it takes is a little change in the economy or something big, unexpected in the Minnesota economy to change that. But it's looking like we continue with a $2 billion surplus. You could see that as a cash bonding bill and it'd all be gone, or you can see that spent in many different ways depending on what issues would come up in the next few months. But also wanted to remind everyone where agriculture stands, and then probably transportation is our other big issue. Health and Human Services and education take 65% of our Minnesota state budget. Agriculture's down here, it's less than 1%. It's stuck in with jobs, commerce, and housing. And then transportation is 2%. So I think when a lot of farmers think of government, they think of, well, what's in transportation, what's in agriculture, and kind of leave it at that. As you might remember, we are a very, very, very small fish in this $32 billion pond for the kind of top issues that we're thinking about. So for Minnesota Milk, because not much changed last year specifically, we certainly played a lot of defense and had a lot of conversations, but we've got $4 million in DAIRI to deploy. On the last call, I got some maybe bad news about the Farm Bill, at least timing-wise. It's not looking good to happen in fiscal year 2024, not fiscal calendar year 2024. So the question is, will it happen early next year, or will it get punted further down the road? In our conversations with House and Senate leadership last year, they were kind of nervous if we didn't have a farm bill that we should get that out. I can't say I disagree. The whole point of the program, however, was to incentivize DMC signups, which worked fabulously. And talking to the board, talking to the policy committee several times last year, we kept agreeing that that was the best net spend, because that $4 million in a bad year turns into millions and millions, maybe billions of dollars over a 5-year farm bill of net benefit to farmers as kind of an insurance program. So that is where our policy currently is. If it's clear that the farm bill is going to change significantly, we'll have those discussions, but I know that's top of mind. I think the other thing we will see legislatively is PFAS and PFOS. Minnesota is where some of that's manufactured. There are things going on the east side of the state. MPCA came out with a draft statement yesterday, and this affects milk in a few ways. One, based on what we've seen in New Mexico and Maine, there are implications of this for milk. We know there are some biosolids that have been spread on farmland, so this is municipal waste, has this PFAS, this PFAS, these forever chemicals in it. That doesn't go away. It gets spread onto agricultural land, and now the agricultural land is contaminated. There's a lot of science up in the air, but I think the general consensus is we need money for research we kind of need a decision on what to do with this land. And our job as Minnesota Milk is to hold farmers harmless. And I believe we have multiple groups, environmental groups, other agriculture groups, all united to hold farmers harmless as we go forward. So if you're a farm who has been accepting these biosolids, I think it'd be good to reach out to me just so you can stay involved on what's happening there. Some of the things we've seen in Maine is condemning the land, and we just certainly don't want farmers themselves in trouble for doing what was the right thing for each municipality. Then I think the other big discussion we've been involved in since last year is the University of Minnesota St. Paul campus and agriculture investment. The new president, Rebecca Cunningham, has taken agriculture and it was never off the list, but it was maybe number 5 or 6 on the list, and it's moved near the top. She's got a medical background, food is medicine, and she really has separated the Twin Cities campus. You will hear her call it the St. Paul campus and the Minneapolis campus. And so I think it may not happen in 2025, but I think we are setting the stage for a kind of renewal of the St. Paul campus. And with that is a renewal of our research and outreach centers in Minnesota, the ones that affect dairy, and the future one that's planned near Austin, Minnesota. So that is kind of top of mind for me right now, but we have not talked to the policy committee, and certainly at this point, if you're seeing things missing on the list, weigh in, and we will talk about them at our upcoming policy committee meeting in December. The regulatory front is probably where there's a lot more work. It's been widely rumored and pushed that the 70/20 feedlot rules will be brought forward. If that happens, that is a total rewrite on science-based standards for our feedlots of all sizes in Minnesota. So that's everybody with 10 animal units or 7 cows and up. If we are basing them on what we saw in the NPDES permits, which now require cover crops for most months of the year, have limitations on when and how you can spread manure, that's very worrisome and cost for both our farmers, of course, we care about foremost, but even if all those laws passed, I know I've talked to counties and county feedlot officers that are concerned about the unfunded mandates that could happen at the county level. So we'll see if we, first of all, open that up, and second of all, what that looks like, how big of a span we have. But I think we will have a coalition of counties and agriculture groups working together to say, okay, if we're going to do this, how do we do it somewhat right? And I think most of us in the agriculture community believe that in Minnesota, we don't need more regulation on the environment. We maybe need the opposite, or at least a way to pay for it if we were going to do something like that. And I don't know that much money is out there. The second two things, number 2 and 3, there's 2 committees going on right now that Minnesota Milk is involved with. There's a kind of short term is Climate Marketplace Committee evaluating. There's a report due to the legislature whether the state of Minnesota should be putting together some sort of climate or ecosystem service marketplace. And then there's a Cooperative Financial Disclosure Committee. We weren't involved. This bill came up last year and passed for additional financial disclosure. We've been asked in the committee, which I agreed to. There's also a farmer committee. So if any of you are interested in being on the farmer specific committee, I was just told yesterday I'm not allowed to be on it, which is fine. But if any of you are interested in this subject and want to learn more about cooperative financial disclosure, it's not just dairy specific. It did come from a dairy farmer. This committee is for you. So you can't be on both committees, but you can certainly be on the farmer committee. Next, I'll say this is probably fully outside the legislature and almost fully outside of our state agencies to some extent, MPCA's involved, but EPA has promised us essentially at a meeting we held in Zumbrota that there will be more visits on dairy farms during bad weather this fall. A day like today could be exactly the sort of day that I'm thinking it could happen, with no knowledge of when it's happening. But I've been working very closely with EPA and MPCA and the farmers who were involved in the first 2 visits and trying to set a good roadmap for Minnesota farms who are affected by this. And I think my message to you would be, call me, not that I'm the know-all end-all, but I can get you to people who can help as resources. We started in a spot that we thought was almost devastating for these farms. The initial, after the inspection, what EPA gives you is very scary. And I just want to say, I think we've gotten to a point of conversation and ability to work with EPA. And NPCA, I think I would argue, has stood behind these farmers and done a great job kind of being an advocate on why and how the regulations are enforced here in the state. So if you or a farmer you know is inspected, I would advocate that you call me, call neighbors. You maybe don't need to or want to be vocal publicly just due to the scrutiny that it brings. But within the industry, there's a lot I think you can learn that can help you, and most importantly, save you a lot of money and time and installation of new practices or structures if we just spread the word. I've been asked by a committee in Southeast Minnesota to maybe put together a fact sheet or a best practices sheet, and that's something that we're working on. Finally, next up is mandatory milk sampling by order of USDA H5N1. USDA put out a press release on October 30th, and it was pretty nondescript whether it was about the old voluntary program that Minnesota had said they would opt into, which is double blind, or the new program. But we're still learning more details, and the Department of Agriculture is still learning more details about what this program means. But we know that USDA wants mandatory testing, or is commanding mandatory testing on first those states who are in the voluntary program, so Minnesota, Wisconsin, and many others. And then second, all states will be in the mandatory testing program. And we are working with them now to figure out how we do this. It sounds like the states, with USDA's permission, have the option probably after January 1st to either sample at the milk silo, which is a lot of headaches, sample at the farm, which is a whole nother set of headaches, or sample at bulk tanks, or excuse me, milk tankers as they maybe come in, which looks to be what makes the most sense. We're very frustrated by this, and my friends in Wisconsin are as well, because the goals don't necessarily line up with the tactics here. And we'll keep weighing in. We are talking as much as we can with the Minnesota turkey industry about this. They are very upset that we don't have more sampling and more testing done. But we are trying to do what we can do best for all agriculture in Minnesota. And I think because the disease operates very, very differently in different species, it's frustrating. But as you've maybe heard, the disease has gone to different species outside of cattle now, and that's creating a little bit of panic for health officials. So it's something we're trying to sensibly navigate through. The constitutional referendum passed 77%. There was some politics in this and what it does, but I think one of my initiatives moving forward will be trying to get our traditional agriculture people, agriculture researchers interested in this referendum. I just did a quick tally on the number of projects that went to the University of Minnesota. There's probably a whole 3 times this total projects, but I just looked at what the projects went to fund, and these are often $500,000 to $1 million to $4 million projects. And as you can see, there wasn't really much that was directly towards improving farm practices. It's kind of been a niche business of certain researchers know that this money is available. They go sign up and they kind of speak to the committee. With a 67-67 House, not only does that maybe change the speakership, change the committee makeup, but it also changes who might get things like lottery proceeds like this. So I think it's an opportunity for us to weigh in on who might be on that committee, and more importantly, which researchers are applying for the committee in the first place. Because when you think of water, you think of farming. And as you can see, there's a great interest right now in the water-related projects that at least went to the University of Minnesota, but cities and other universities also did that. I'm going to fly through the last few here, and we'll take questions. I mostly want to promote our Farmers for Sustainable Food Climate Smart program, which Minnesota Milk has signed up for. If you're not familiar with us, it's a sister affiliate of our organization, of our Voice of Milk. It was started by EDGE, DBA, and the Nature Conservancy, but it's basically connecting farmers to projects. That's what we're trying to do, and this is all going to be recorded, or I can send you the slides. We're award-winning. We've got all sorts of projects. We've done one with Zoetis to look at 8,000 animals through the Clarified program, looking at methane intensity and other things. So just a wide range of projects. But the Driftless Area Ag Alliance is in Southeast Minnesota. I'm excited to share that we might have. I'm excited to hope that we might have another group joining us in Central Minnesota soon. But we have a Climate Smart project, and if you're a member of Minnesota Milk or a member of these local farmer-led groups, you can join the Climate Smart Project. It's $50 million. We do split that with sugar beets. So our goal is to get the money on the ground to the farmers. And what we want is your data. We're not forcing any practices. And so we're rewarding farmers up to $9,000 per year. There's 3 tiers, but it's available to all Minnesota Milk members or new Minnesota Milk members or members of this farmer-led group. We also have AgriPure members who are signing up through AgriPure. But this is what I just explained. But you need to be within our geography. You need to participate for up to 5 years. There's 4 years left. And non-dairy farmers can participate if they send their feed to a dairy farm. So there must be a dairy connection there. But this is what I wanted to get to. There's a kind of quick version. There's a more detailed version, and then there's an advanced version. If you just share that with your co-op or processor, whether they want it or not, that's not your fault or your problem. But as we walk through it on a few farms now, I'm really excited about what this can bring us for future environmental things to maybe combat some of what we've seen on the legislative and regulatory end. So if you haven't looked at that or signed up, I'd highly advocate it. We will probably run out of space and AKA money for people to sign up. And so I hope it's something you look at. Again, no required practice changes. We just want to see your data, aggregate it, give it to your processor. If you're interested, there's an email that you can send to climate-smart@voiceofmilk.com, or you can just email me or reach out at any time. So are there any questions in the chat about elections, Climate Smart, what Minnesota Milk is or should be doing? I know based on the last one, people were just taking this in, but I will stand for questions for at least 3 minutes. Everyone's waiting for everyone else to answer a question or ask a question. Well, maybe I won't wait 3 minutes. But raise your hand, type in the chat, type in the Q&A. Otherwise, look forward to working with all of you in legislative session. Thanks so much for joining on, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great day.